Welcome back to this Java Intermediate course. This course is presented by Coding Bootcamps. This is our final session and our final video. In this session, we are going to discuss web applications. So this is session 10, again, our final video and our final session. Just to recap from our previous session, we discussed the Java SQL package. We discussed JDBC architectures and drivers. We discussed database connections with Java, and we went over basic queries and updates, and we also covered the rest of the topics that are listed here for Java database connectivity. Again, this is session 10. This is our outline. Again, this is our final session and our final video. We are going to discuss Java Web Applications, and Java Web Applications are part of Java Enterprise Edition. So we'll discuss Java EE application servers. We'll look at web application directories and WAR files, deploying a Java web application and the web XML file. Servlet architecture, we'll look at the Java Servlet package, Servlet classes and interfaces, writing a servlet. We'll look at Servlet requests and Servlet responses, handling HTML forms, and retrieving request parameters. So Java Enterprise Edition at a glance. Java Enterprise Edition is a standard community-driven enterprise software package. So Java EE is developed by the Java community with contributions from industry experts, commercial software, and open source organizations, as well as Java user groups and individuals. Today, Java EE offers a rich enterprise-level software platform with over 20 compliant Java enterprise implementations to choose from. There are lots of options and the quality is very high. So if you get a chance, please look closer at the Java Enterprise Edition. So a Java application server is a software application that actually listens for HTTP requests and also responds to them. The application server not only listens for and manages HTTP requests, it also runs Java software applications in order to build web pages, connect to databases, and send those built web pages back to users. Here's a listing of some popular Java web application servers. So we see Tomcat, JBoss, WebLogic, Jetty, Glassfish, and we can see some percentages here as far as market share for other Java web application servers. So in software engineering and in Java web development, there is a resource called a WAR file. This is a web application resource or a web application archive. It's very, very similar to a jar file, and it's used to distribute the collection of Java web resources, including Java server pages, Java servlets, Java classes, any and all XML files, tag libraries, static web pages, images, and other resources that together constitute the web application. The advantage to the WAR file is easy deployment of the web application and easy testing, easy identification of the version of the deployed application, and all J2EE containers support WAR files, and the MVC structure also supports WAR files. So a WAR file looks a lot like a zipped file, but if you can unzip it, you can look at the contents, and inside you will see all of the resources for your Java web application. And the WAR file runs on the web application server. So on a web application server, there are two ways that they run in what they call exploded format or archived format. In other words, the web application server will either unzip and extract all of the files into a specific directory, or the archived or the zipped WAR file will act as its own directory, and that itself can run on the web application server. If any components of the web application are modified, such as the HTML files, the JSP, the servlets, the deployment descriptors, that entire web application needs to be redeployed to the specific directory. When you edit a component of a web application that is deployed as a WAR file, again, you will need to rebuild the WAR file and upload it and redeploy it again. One thing to be aware of, if you use the exploded directory format, that your descriptor file, which is your web XML file, will have certain metadata. And one particular thing to watch out for if you use the exploded format are JSP files. JSP files are, when they are redeployed, there is a setting called page check seconds, and that is an attribute that is defined within the deployment descriptor or the web XML file of your application. So the attribute defines the time interval at which the server checks the JSP files to see if they have been modified. If set to O, the pages are checked on every request. If set to I, page checking and recompiling is disabled. So JSP files are redeployed automatically only if to the administration server. If you want JSP files redeployed to manage servers targeted by the web application, you must redeploy the web application. Java servlets are web pages essentially, but they're special web pages. They don't look like web pages, they look like Java applications. So Java servlets are Java programs that run on the web application server and act as a middle layer for requests that come in from the user through the web browser or other HTTP clients, also databases and any other applications associated with the web application. So using a servlet, you can collect input from users through web page forms, present records from a database or any other source. You can create web pages just based on that dynamic content. You can add images, add video files, really whatever needs to be done to build your web page or your mobile page to return back to the calling browser and ultimately to the user. Java servlets offer the same purpose as programs implemented using the Common Gateway interface. And this is, it's still in use, but it is an older protocol. Servlets offer more advantages in comparison with the Common Gateway interface, or CGI. So this diagram serves a good depiction of the servlet architecture. We can see a web browser here connected over the internet using the HTTP protocol. The servlet is running on the web application server, so it's connected here, and it's also connected to a database and also other resources such as images. And based on the requests and based on the Java that's running, certain input can be built, data can be selected, or else data can be input, and pages can be built and sent back to the user through the web browser. Here is a summary of the interfaces that are included with the Java Servlet package. We can see here Servlet defines the methods that all servlets must implement. So this is something you want to take a look at. Also, Servlet response defines an object to assist a servlet with sending a response to an HTTP client. A servlet request defines an object to provide client request information to a servlet. So take a minute and take a look at all of these. You can always look all of this up in the documentation. However, certainly servlet request, servlet response, these are interfaces that you're going to certainly be dealing a lot with if you are building servlets, but the rest of these interfaces are also quite useful. For the complete documentation on Java servlets, classes, and interfaces, visit the Oracle website. You can try the link below or certainly search on the Oracle website for information on Java servlet, classes, and interfaces. So this is a Java servlet. This is a good example of it, and it is built from an interface, and you can see here what we're importing here. We're importing the servlet package and the servlet HTTP as well as Java IO, and we're extending the HTTP servlet. So our class is hello world. We have an initialization method where we will define our message string. And if we look here at this HTTP servlet request, which in this case is a get, when a get is called, we are going to print out the message. So we have our print writer object here, which we are instantiating, and we are calling print line on our print writer, and we're printing this message hello world back to this web page. And you can see here we are adding some tags here. We're adding some header tags, and we also have some response type content as well. However, the servlet will manage a lot of building some of the boilerplate HTML for us. So just like we saw in the servlet, we have HTTP requests, and we also have responses, and they are objects that are part of the servlet. So a servlet container is connected to that web application server and receives HTTP requests from a user or a web browser client on a certain port. When the client sends the request to the web server that the servlet is listening on, the servlet container creates HTTP servlet requests and response objects and passes them as an argument to the servlet service message. The response objects allows for formatting and sending the response back to the client. So in other words, based on the request, the servlet is going to build a web page and send that web page in the form of HTML tags and other types of web page language, including Ajax and JavaScript, is going to send that back to the web browser to allow the user to interact with the web application. These are some commonly used servlet methods. So we have our get character encoding. It returns the name of the MIME character set used in the body of a response sent to the client. We have get content type returns the response type, either text, HTML, or so on. A servlet output stream or get output stream returns a servlet output stream suitable for writing binary data in a response. And we have our get writer returns the print writer object. I think we just saw an example of that. We have set content length, and that receives an integer. It sets the length of the response body. We also have the set buffer size. We have the get buffer size, so we can return a buffer size. We can flush a buffer, so that forces any content in the buffer to be written to the content. We can find out, we can use is committed and returns a Boolean indicated if a response has been committed, and we see reset here clears the data of the buffer along with the headers and status code. So take a look at these, take a look at some of the examples. These are quite useful methods in building our web application, building our servlets that are part of our web application. One important thing that we will be doing as part of our web application is we will be building web pages and sending them back to the user. So we can see here, this is an example of a form, a login form, which we will build. We can build with a servlet and actually interact with the user. And this is actually a dynamic form because we can actually take the text of a username and a password, validate it by way of the servlet, and then obviously allow the user to continue with the application or send a message that either the username or the password or both are incorrect. In order to build this form, we need to send back HTML tags, and we can see here some of the tags: form, which you see here, input, which you see here. We can also see select is another tag. We don't have an example of it here, but text area is another one. So we have to know the types of web pages, and we have to know what we need on the forms, whether we need drop-down lists, text boxes, text areas, check boxes, radio buttons, submit buttons. We have to know that, but all of this can be built through a servlet and sent back to a user's browser. So to make the forms work with the servlet, we need to specify the following attributes again: form tag, and we have to understand the method here. So here the method is post, which is an HTTP request. So to send a post form data as a HTTP post request to the server, generally form submission should be done using HTTP post because that keeps the URL, actually the user's URL, clear of any private data. And the action here, we can see the action is actually directing us to the servlet, and that specifies the URL of the servlet, which is responsible for handling the posted data from this form. Now, interestingly enough, we are saying that right here under action, it's the URL of the servlet. And when we first work on servlets, they're actually Java files. So we'll actually discuss how we take that Java file and map it to this URL. And this is the exact URL that we would see in a browser. Obviously, this is just part of that URL. Let's discuss this URL before we move on. So this URL is actually mapping to a servlet, but the servlet doesn't exist as a URL as far as the web application. It exists as a file, a name.java typically, where we map this URL. So how the web server knows to actually call the servlet with this URL, it's mapped in the deployment descriptor or the web XML file. So one of the main purposes of the deployment descriptor or the web XML file is to map the URLs with our servlet names. There are other data and other mappings done in the web XML file. However, without that deployment descriptor, without that mapping, this form would not be able to find the appropriate servlet. A Java server page is related to servlets. I'll just say related for now. And it's also a web page. It looks more like a web page certainly than a servlet does. And JSPs handle data parsing automatically through the following methods. So getting a request parameter to get the value of a form parameter. So if we're passing in a parameter to a like our username or our password, request parameter can return that for the JSP. If we're posting that to the JSP, we'll actually get that data the user is sending us. We use get parameter values if we have a multi-value element on our form, such as checkboxes, which can return multiple values. Get parameter names, we call this method if we want to complete a list of the parameters in the current request. And get input stream, we call this method to read binary data stream coming from the client. So here is an example of a Java server page right here. We can see its URL. It's just being called main.jsp, not that it has a main method or anything. However, you can see here how a JSP can look more like a web page, certainly than a servlet does. Again, its URL is this host, port 8080 and main.jsp, but we can also pass parameters to this JSP, so the user can pass these. And so we can pass first name is Zara, last name is Ali. And if we look here, we can call that request, and because this also is a request, get parameter. And since it's first underscore name, we can say first underscore name, and also request dot parameter here. We can call get parameter on last name. We can see last name here. So notice how this is built. We have the question mark after the main URL of the JSP page, and then we essentially pass in the list of strings here that we want to pass as parameters. So first name and last name will be passed, and we'll see that the first name again is Zara, and that can be captured by the JSP and put into a variable and operated on, as well as the last name Ali can be captured, put into a variable, and operated on. So just to summarize what we discussed here in this session for Java Web Applications, we discussed Java Enterprise Edition, we discussed application servers, web application servers and WAR files, deploying a web application and the web.xml file, servlet architecture, we discussed the servlet package, the Java servlet package, servlet classes and interfaces, writing a servlet, HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Request response, that's how web and mobile applications almost all work. Handling HTML forms and retrieving request parameters. Again, if you're interested in any private tutoring sessions for software design, software engineering, there are weekly and monthly plans. Please consult your learning materials. There are live private coaching sessions available for Java, and also just to learn the Java programming language better, there are also private tutoring sessions available, as well as standard class training. And so here's a little bit more for software engineering classes. Introduction to Python programming, this is a good one. Introduction to C programming, this is also another good one. Another good one is Introduction or Learn C++ programming by examples. And this is another good one to learn, Introduction to the Go programming language. This is becoming more and more popular. And our follow-up classes are Advanced Java and Learn Kotlin Programming by Examples. So this is another good one. Kotlin is very, very closely related to Java, but it has some safety measures or some safety built into its syntax, so it can be more efficient in the particularly the mobile world, and Kotlin is also becoming more and more popular. But if you know Java, you'll be able to pick up Kotlin quite readily. And again, thank you so much for taking this class. It's been a pleasure presenting this to you. And again, this has been a presentation of Coding Boot Camps.